Aiden Cross believed in the idea that trust was the most fragile form of currency. Once broken, it could never be repaired, no matter how much time passed. For years, he had built his world around loyalty, his friendship with Daniel Ward, his work, his dreams of building something meaningful. Together, they created CodeSpire, a small but rising cybersecurity firm that promised to change the digital world. Aiden handled the systems. Daniel handled the business. It was perfect until greed crept in. It started with whispers. Late-night calls Aiden wasn't a part of. Deals he didn't know existed. Financial moves Daniel never explained. But he ignored them. Friendship, after all, was stronger than suspicion. That's what he thought. One morning, everything shattered. The police burst through his apartment door before sunrise, guns drawn, shouting his name. Within minutes, Aiden's world turned into chaos. He was accused of orchestrating one of the largest corporate cyber attacks in the city's history. Data theft, identity leaks, billions lost. His systems, his company, his code all pointed directly to him. Daniel stood there in the courtroom, calm, sympathetic, pretending to be shocked. Aiden's mind screamed as evidence after evidence appeared, all flawless, all pointing toward him. But the perfection of the lies was the real proof. Daniel knew him too well, knew exactly how to frame him line by line, code by code. Aiden's words meant nothing. The judge looked at him as if he was the devil in a hoodie. When the sentence came, 10 years, Aiden didn't even blink. He just stared at Daniel, and Daniel looked away. That silence burned deeper than any bullet. Prison was a slow death. Every night, Aiden replayed the betrayal, the moments he'd missed, the trust he'd given. But as the days turned into months, the rage began to crystallize. It stopped being noise. It became purpose. In the dim light of his cell, he started writing. Not letters, not appeals code, fragments of digital ghosts, pieces of a plan that no one would ever see coming. He listened. He learned. Inside prison walls, he met people who lived in the shadows. Hackers, frauds, manipulators, monsters. He studied them all. They taught him how to vanish from the grid, how to rewrite identity, how to create chaos in silence. By the time he left prison 5 years later, Aiden Cross was no longer a man. He was something else. A shadow that remembered everything. The city had changed, but the stench of corruption still lingered. Daniel Ward was now a tech celebrity, CEO of a massive digital empire, loved by the public, admired by the press. The man who stole Aiden's life had built an empire with his blood. Aiden watched him on a billboard one evening. The glowing smile under neon lights. Innovation for a safer tomorrow. The tagline read. He smiled, a cold, empty curve of lips. The irony was poetic. He rented a small apartment under a fake name. Barely furnished, filled only with a laptop, a cracked mirror, and a single bulb that flickered like a dying heartbeat. Every night he sat there, mapping Daniel's empire, tracing his connections, building a web. Revenge, he realized, wasn't about rage, it was about patience. Weeks later, a message appeared in his encrypted inbox. It was from Elena Rivers, an investigative journalist who had once covered his trial. Her message was short. I know you were framed. Meet me if you still care about the truth. He almost deleted it. But something in those words, truth, stirred him. They met in an old cafe, dim and quiet. Alina looked different, sharper, colder, yet still human. She slid a file across the table. Inside were confidential contracts, digital transfers, and communications between Daniel and a government contractor. I've been digging for years, she said softly. Everything leads back to him. Aiden looked at her, unsure if this was another trap. But her eyes didn't lie. She wasn't offering redemption. She was offering a weapon. That night, he opened the files, and as the data unfolded, the world around him darkened. He saw how Daniel had built his empire on corruption, selling defense codes, manipulating systems, blackmailing officials. Every lie, every betrayal, all stitched together into a web of power. He realized then that revenge wasn't just personal anymore. It was moral. He whispered to himself as the screen glowed on his face. Justice isn't blind. It's just waiting for someone brave enough to open its eyes. And that night, the shadow was born. Days turned into weeks, and the shadow grew bolder. Aiden knew Daniel's empire was protected by firewalls and bodyguards. But every fortress has a flaw, okay? And every king sleeps somewhere. He started with whispers, not weapons. Anonymous leaks appeared on underground forums. Small but deadly accurate private emails, encrypted data, financial discrepancies. The cracks began to form in Daniel's perfect image. Alina helped him move unseen. She had contacts, access to sources, and a way to spin the story without revealing her hand. Together they built a narrative, not of revenge, but of exposure. Daniel's empire started bleeding quietly. Investors pulled out. Partners questioned his ethics. The media started asking questions no one had dared ask before. But Daniel was not a fool. He'd survived worse storms. He began tracing the digital trail, hiring private investigators and hackers to find the ghost haunting his systems. And that's when he made his first mistake. He underestimated how much Aiden had changed. One night, Daniel sat in his penthouse office, lights low, city glowing beneath him as his system flickered. A file appeared on his desktop, a file he hadn't downloaded. Hello_Daniel. His hand froze over the mouse. He clicked it. The screen filled with old photographs, him and Aiden smiling, laughing, building code Spire. Then the images distorted, glitched, burned into static. A single line of text appeared. You built your empire on my ashes. Now it's time to choke on the smoke. Daniel threw his laptop across the room. His reflection in the glass window stared back calm, trembling, terrified. Meanwhile, Aiden was always 3 steps ahead. He didn't want Daniel dead. He wanted him destroyed, piece by piece, lie by lie, until nothing remained of the man but guilt. Revenge wasn't about taking a life. It was about taking away what made life worth living. But in the process, Aiden began losing himself. The line between justice and obsession blurred. Nights stretched endlessly, his apartment filled with screens flickering like ghosts. He barely slept, barely ate. Alina noticed the change. She confronted him one evening, slamming her hands on the table. This isn't justice anymore. Aiden, you're becoming him. He looked at her blankly, his eyes hollow. I became what he created. Now I'm just finishing the equation. She wanted to argue. But there was no trace of the man she'd once believed in, only a shadow wearing his face. Aiden's next move was personal. He hacked into Daniel's communication servers and found hidden evidence files proving Daniel had betrayed not just him, but countless others. Politicians, clients, even his own family. Among them, one file stood out. Project Seraph. Inside it was proof Daniel had sold sensitive defense algorithms to a rival nation, putting thousands of lives at risk. That was Aiden's moment of choice. He could leak it and destroy Daniel completely, or use it to pull him closer, make him crumble from within. He chose the latter. Revenge was not a hammer. It was a scalpel. He sent Daniel a message through a secure channel, the same one they had used years ago in their startup days. I have something that belongs to you. Minutes later, a reply came. Who is this? Aiden smirked. You already know. From that moment, Daniel's calm world shattered. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't trust anyone. Every sound felt like footsteps, every message like a threat. His paranoia grew until it began consuming him. He started firing loyal employees, changing passwords daily, destroying evidence that no one had even seen yet. He was unraveling. Alina watched all of this unfold with mixed emotions. She admired Aiden's brilliance, but feared the darkness swallowing him. When this ends, she said quietly one night, there'll be nothing left of you. Aiden didn't look up from his screen. There's nothing left already. Days later, Aiden infiltrated a live virtual conference Daniel was hosting for investors. As Daniel spoke confidently about innovation and progress, his screen flickered mid-sentence and replaced its video with a leaked recording of him admitting to manipulating the government contracts. Thousands watched in shock as the truth poured out live. The conference collapsed into chaos. Daniel's empire fell that day, but Aiden wasn't satisfied. The revenge wasn't complete. The world had seen Daniel's mask shatter. But Aiden wanted Daniel to feel what he had felt. The isolation, the humiliation, the loss of control. So he arranged one final meeting. A message reached Daniel's personal phone. A single location. A warehouse by the docks. Midnight. Daniel arrived alone. Desperate, rain pouring down, his reflections scattered in puddles. He entered the dark space lit only by a single hanging bulb. And from the shadows, a voice emerged. Calm, familiar, chilling. You finally came, Daniel. Daniel's breath caught. Aiden, you're alive. No, Aiden said, stepping into the light. I'm what you left behind. The silence between them stretched like a blade. Daniel tried to justify, to explain, to twist the truth again, but Aiden had heard it all before. This time, there were no lies left to tell. Rain poured outside like the sky itself wanted to wash away their sins. The warehouse smelled of rust and old regrets. Daniel stood frozen, water dripping from his hair, staring at the ghost of the man he'd buried 5 years ago. Aiden's face was calm, but his eyes burned. Not with hatred, but with something deeper, something emptier. Daniel tried to smile, but his voice trembled. You don't understand, Aiden. It wasn't supposed to go this way. You were too good. You would have ruined everything. Aiden tilted his head slightly, almost curious. Everything. You mean your lies? Your stolen empire? Your illusion of power? Daniel took a step forward. You think you were the only one who suffered? I carried the guilt every day. Aiden let out a soft laugh. Guilt. You built an empire while I rotted in a cell. Don't mistake guilt for fear, Daniel. You've only just started feeling what I felt. Lightning flashed through the broken windows, slicing the darkness for a second. Aiden stepped closer. Daniel's breath quickened. You destroyed my life because you were afraid to fail, Aiden said. Now you'll fail in the only thing you ever valued, control. Daniel's voice cracked. What do you want from me? I already took what I wanted, Aiden whispered. Your company is gone. Your reputation is ashes. Now I just want you to see yourself for what you are. He tossed a small device onto the floor. A holographic projection flickered to life. Live footage from news channels, social media. Headlines, tech CEO Daniel Ward exposed for espionage. His world was collapsing in real time. Daniel fell to his knees. Please, Aiden, stop this. I'll confess. Aiden interrupted, his tone cold and flat. You already confessed. The whole world heard you. You just didn't know it. Daniel's eyes widened. He looked around, panic rising in his chest. Then what now? You kill me. Aiden looked at him, really looked at him. The man he once called brother. The friend who'd shared dreams and secrets. The reflection of what he might have become. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small flash drive, and tossed it at Daniel's feet. That's every piece of evidence that can save you, Aiden said. If you still believe redemption is real, use it. But there's a price. Daniel frowned. What price? Disappear, Aiden said quietly. Walk away. Leave everything. Never come back. Daniel stared at the flash drive, then at Aiden. You think I can start over? Aiden turned away. You won't, but maybe I can. For a moment, the only sound was the rain. Daniel picked up the drive slowly, his hands shaking. Aiden walked toward the exit, his silhouette fading into the dark. But before leaving, he stopped. Do you know what the worst part was, Daniel? He asked softly. It wasn't losing my freedom. It was realizing that I once believed in you. He stepped outside. The rain hit his face like forgiveness he didn't deserve. Behind him, Daniel shouted something, words lost to the storm. It didn't matter anymore. Aiden walked into the night, his coat heavy, his heart empty. The city lights shimmered ahead like broken promises. Alina waited at the edge of the docks, her umbrella trembling in the wind. You did it, she said. Aiden nodded. No, he whispered. I just ended it. She looked at him for a long moment, then asked, So what now? Aiden stared at the horizon. Now? I disappear too. He handed her a small envelope. Inside is everything. His files, his crimes, the truth. Do what you do best. Elena's eyes softened. And you? Aiden smiled faintly. Shadows don't retire. They just fade. He turned and walked away, his reflection swallowed by the rain. Alina opened the envelope, her breath catching as she saw a handwritten note inside. Just one sentence. They said revenge would set me free. But freedom feels a lot like loneliness. She looked up, but he was gone. Only the sound of rain remained, steady, endless, washing the city clean. Somewhere in the distance, a neon sign flickered, spelling out one last irony, Code Spire building trust through innovation. And beneath that dying light, the shadow of Aiden Cross vanished forever. Asterisk.